This, you look something, and it's not pretty. The eyeshadow, you shouldn't have done the eyeshadow. I didn't want to do the eyeshadow. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be fancy, but it's ugly. Back to the murder, like, there's more important issues in the world. People are dying. Hey guys, what's up? Happy New Year. My name is Sky Webb, and I'm here to talk about a true crime story that I cannot get off my mind. But before I get started, I just want to put out a little disclaimer that I mean no harm to any of the victims or the victims' families, and I wish everybody who was hurt within this story the utmost peace and solace, either in rest or in recovery. With that out of the way, welcome to 2020. It is the new year. I don't know how the fuck we did it, but we did it. We survived 2019. Congratulations. I think everybody deserves a round of applause for getting through the shitstorm that was 2019. Welcome to 2020. 2020 is gonna be a good year. I have a good feeling. So to start the new year off with a bang, the first Thursday true crime video is going to be all about a New Year's Eve double murder. The murder of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope. Ben Smart was 21 years old at the time of the murder and Olivia Hope was only 17. They were both from New Zealand and they had both been celebrating the new year, welcoming in 1998, and they were at a party at the Phoenix Lodge in Marlborough Sounds. I don't know how to pronounce that. That shit sounds way too bougie for me to know how to pronounce. I'm way not bougie enough for that. Sorry. It was a party at like this fancy place. It was a pretty small place, but it was like a pop-in place. Like it was fancy. So they were partying with about 1,000 other people crammed into this sort of small area. And among those 1,000 people was Amelia Hope, which was Olivia's older sister, as well as some of Amelia's friends. So as the party started to die down, the pair went back to the Tamarack. The Tamarack was this huge yacht that they were planning to stay at that night. They were planning on sleeping there, but when they got back there, they realized that a lot of like freeloaders and partygoers had taken up all the rooms and the free beds, and they no longer wanted to stay there. So they decided that they would try and get back to the mainland, where they would then have to figure out where they were going to stay the night. So Amelia Hope, which was Olivia's sister, and her friend Rick Goddard, they decided to go back to the Tamarack as well, and so they caught a water taxi. So the driver of the water taxi was named Guy Wallace, and he had actually doubled as a server and a bartender that night. So he was working the party where they all were at, and then he decided to take people back and forth as a water taxi after the party had sort of died down and ended. So on board the water taxi, there was obviously Amelia and Rick, there was the driver Guy Wallace, and then there was another couple, Hayden Morrissey and Sarah Dyer, and as well as them was one other stranger who no one really knew. They didn't know what his name was, and they just described him as being a single man. He had asked for a lift, and so he was on board as well. So when they arrived at the Tamarack, Amelia and Rick got off and they went back to the Tamarack because they actually had somewhere to stay. They still had a room. And so Olivia and Ben took their place on the water taxi. So once on the water taxi, Ben and Olivia basically were just complaining and telling everybody on board that they didn't really have anywhere to go. They weren't really sure what they were doing. They said, just, take all these people back to where they're gonna go and then just take us back to the mainland. We're not really sure what we're doing yet. We're just trying to figure out a plan. And so the single man offered to let them stay the night on his yacht, and the pair graciously accepted that offer. They were really grateful that he had offered them a place to stay, as they really were kind of desperate. They didn't really have the money or, didn't want to risk trying to find someone to stay and pay accommodation when it was like really late. It was about 4 a.m. at this time, and so they accepted his offer. So Guy Wallace dropped Ben, Olivia, and the single man off at his yacht, which was said to have been a double-story wooden yacht. And then after that, Guy Wallace dropped off the other couple back to their holiday home, which was nearby. And that was the last time that anybody had seen Olivia or Ben alive. So both Ben and Olivia were reported missing on the 2nd of January by their parents after they had just not come home. And the police investigation started. So not a lot happened between the 2nd and the 5th. I got a lot of cramps. Whew. Cool. But on the 5th, a new detective, Inspector Rob Pope, started to take over the investigation, which was now nicknamed TAM, short for Tamarack. So Guy Wallace was one of the first people to be investigated. he was interviewed, and he was actually able to describe the man on the boat, the single man. He described him as having quite long hair, quite unruly, unkept hair, as well as not being shaven. He had a beard and just overall appeared to be unkempt. He was also able to describe the yacht where he had actually dropped them all off, and as I said earlier, he claimed that it was double-story, made of timber, and was quite nice looking, but definitely less modern than some of the yachts that surround the area. He also claimed that the single man had been quite interested in Olivia, and he actually came across as being quite sleazy. So police also spoke to a number of other witnesses, and one of those witnesses was actually Guy Wallace's manager from like the party, the club. And he claims that he actually served this man on the night of the party. He served him at the bar. And he also backed up Guy, saying that the man had long hair, he had a beard, and he appeared to be quite, not dirty necessarily, but definitely unkempt. And he said that he resembled a sailor or somebody who was sort of out in the elements type thing. The two men also claimed that he might have had hooded eyes or something to that extent, where his eyes were sort of smaller and squinted or hooded. And along with this, Hayden Morrissey, who was the man from the couple that was on the boat, he also claimed that the boat had definitely been two-story and made of some kind of wood and was quite shiny. So by the 11th, Inspector Pope had found his primary suspect, and that was Scott Watson. Scott Watson was 27 years old at the time. He had short brown hair and a clean-shaven face. He owned a one-story yacht which was actually nicknamed the Blade, and that was kept in the same area, and he had actually been captured on like camera footage the night of the murders, and it was very obvious in this footage that he had the short haircut and that he was clean shaven. So very different to what the witnesses had originally described the man in question. But this was now the primary suspect, Scott Watson. He did have quite an extensive criminal history, but most of that dated back to his teenage years, and that involved burglary, theft, and cannabis use. And it was these past crimes that actually led to Inspector Pope announcing that this man had the right sort of agenda and pedigree to be the man in question. Which I think that's quite a bold statement to make, especially when the past is like burglary or cannabis use. That seems very different to a double murder, but I don't know. So Guy Wallace was shown a photograph of Scott Watson, and he immediately dismissed that there was any chance of Scott being the man from the taxi. He said that they looked worlds apart and it was just not possible that he was the man in question. The photograph was also shown to other key witnesses, and they pretty much all came back with the same story, that he just didn't match the image that they had of the guilty man. So they were then shown a second photograph of Scott Watson, and this time he appeared to be mid-blink, and so his eyes were sort of half closed. This gave off the illusion that he might have had hooded eyes or squinted eyes, which is what the men earlier said that the man in question had. And so this time they said that in this photograph, he sort of resembled the man from the taxi, and because of this resemblance, there's a possibility that he might have been the man in question. But they were all sure, absolutely adamant, that the man had had longer hair. So after this, Scott's yacht was actually removed from the marina in order to be searched, as well as his parents' home and his sister's home. They were searched as well. So at this point, Inspector Pope claimed that this second-story yacht, from all of the witnesses' stories, just didn't exist. He believed wholeheartedly that the yacht in question, in which the pair had stayed the night or were going to stay the night, was this one-story yacht, the Blade, which belonged to Scott Watson. So the only real evidence that the inspectors had against Scott Watson was a single strand of hair found on his yacht, and the DNA in this strand of hair matched the DNA of Olivia Hope. Other than that though, they really didn't have any evidence against him. Neither of the victims' bodies had been found even to this day, and so the police really did struggle trying to piece together what might have happened, because they really didn't have any evidence to go off. All they knew was that they were dropped off at a yacht with a man, and they thought that this man was Scott Watson. So the investigators couldn't really offer an explanation as to why the witnesses' statements didn't match up with Scott Watson. Like, the hair didn't match Scott Watson. The statement about his beard and being unkempt and unshaven didn't match Scott Watson. And the stories about the 2-story wooden yacht also didn't match Scott Watson's yacht, the Blade. The only other explanation that they really offered for this was that it was 4 a.m., it was New Year's Eve, it was after a party, they were probably intoxicated. That's really all they could say. Majority of the witnesses did claim that they had been drinking. However, Guy Wallace claimed that he only had 1 or 2 and he was by far the most sober in the entire party. At least that's what he says. And so he definitely stuck by his statement that he had longer hair, he had a beard, and that the yacht was definitely 2 stories. I personally feel like Guy Wallace couldn't have been too intoxicated because A, he was working that night, he was working the party, he was behind the bar. Yes, he had access to alcohol and he did have a couple of drinks, but he would have had to have some wits about him in order to be working, and if not, I feel he would have been sent home if he had been too intoxicated. And also B, he's driving a water taxi, and you can't be too intoxicated if you're going to drive a bunch of people around in a water taxi. At least I would hope not. But for the others, I guess it does kind of make sense that they might have recalled the wrong person, or things might just have gone wrong. So I understand that explanation, but at the same time, it seems like a very weird coincidence that they all said the same things. So on the 15th of June 1998, Scott Watson was actually arrested, and it was only 2 weeks before his birthday. Then in May of 1999, he went to trial. He went to trial for a total of 11 weeks before being sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope. And Scott still to this day claims that he is an innocent man and that he had nothing to do with the murders. He has since tried to appeal the conviction multiple times, and every single time has been unsuccessful. So after Scott had been sentenced to prison, a couple of witnesses did come forward and say that they were very unhappy with the trial and the investigation and what had happened. They claimed that they felt they had been tricked into giving certain statements, and they felt guilt over sending an innocent man to jail. So Guy Wallace spoke to reporters, and he claimed that the entire investigation and the entire interview process with police and investigators was extremely grueling. He said that he felt he was treated as though he were a suspect. He felt as though they were disrespectful towards him, as though they felt they were above him and looked down on him, as though he was guilty of something. He wasn't entirely sure what of, but he felt completely disrespected. And he said that there were multiple times where he would leave an interview and be unable to drive because he was just too shaken up from the interaction. And that's pretty fucked up. That's pretty full on. Guy and his manager, who was also a key witness, claimed that they really were tricked into giving the statements that was used as evidence. They both had completely dismissed Scott as being the suspect when they were first shown a photograph of him. Then they claimed that the real suspect had hooded eyes or squinted eyes, and only after they had made this admission about the hooded eyes, then the police came back with a second photograph that was mid-blink, and that's when there was some sort of resemblance. And they felt like they were tricked into saying that yes, there was a possibility, because they feel as though the police might have sat there and took photo after photo after photo after photo until they finally had a photo that resembled hooded eyes, that would resemble the suspect, and they feel they were manipulated into saying there was a possibility when they really truly didn't believe there was. And they were very sure about this. They were very adamant that the man had longer hair, that he had the beard, that he looked like a sailor, and they just felt like they had been completely manipulated into saying there was a chance when there wasn't. Now in 2019, there are hundreds of people across the internet rallying for Scott Watson's release. There are GoFundMe pages, there are protests, there are internet pages, Facebook pages. There's even a documentary about his innocence. And at the time of his conviction, people were very sort of 50-50 about whether he was guilty or innocent. And since then, it's now about 70-30 in favor of him being innocent. With that being said though, the parents of the victims still live in the same area, and they are forced every single day to look out over that marina, look at those yachts, and also run into Scott Watson's family, into his parents, who also claim that he's innocent. And I just can't even imagine how painful that would be to see everybody rallying towards the person you think has killed your son or your daughter. I can't imagine how that would feel that people are supporting him. So let me know what you think about this story in the comments down below, or you can head over to my Facebook, which is skyweb with 3 B's, and let me know there. I'd love to know what you think about this case. I'd really love to know whether you think he's guilty or not, and I'd really like to know why you think he might be guilty or why you think he might be innocent. I personally feel as though he is guilty because of that strand of hair primarily. I don't comprehend how he would have a strand of Olivia's hair in his yacht if she had not stepped foot into that yacht. Anyway, let me know what you think. I would really love to hear other people's opinions on this, and fresh opinions, not opinions of people who already think he's innocent or already think he's guilty. Opinions primarily from this story and the information that I've given you. I would love to hear it, so please let me know. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you feel like it. I would really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so that you can see all my new videos. I post every single Thursday all about true crime, and I'd really love for you to be a part of it. So make sure you guys are being safe out there. Don't celebrate New Year's Eve at fancy places that I cannot pronounce. Never whinge about not having a place to go in front of random strangers. And most importantly, only sleep on like 3-story white marble yachts with creepy strangers, and not on 1-story wooden yachts with creepy strangers. Make sure you guys are being safe out there. I appreciate you guys watching and supporting me thus far. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.